Japan's biggest bailout won't solve its biggest problem. Japan's been fighting the aftermath of its financial crisis for over 3 decades. In the 90s, the bubble bursted and their banks were left with massive amounts of debt, and their economy would enter what would be called the lost decades. But there was a deeper issue hiding underneath the financial crisis that made the recovery far harder than anyone could imagine. And the problem is still here with us today. Now, Japan is in the headlines again. Its currency has fallen under intense pressure, and America stepped in to save the yen. So how did we get here? More importantly, will this intervention help Japan turn its ship around and save its country from economic Armageddon? The answer may surprise you. Part one, how did we get here? Japan in the 90s is like what we think of Saudi Arabia today. They can just buy anything they want. Japan had some of the highest GDP per capita. Tokyo real estate was extremely expensive. Japanese companies started buying American properties like Rockefeller Center, Pebble Beach, and Columbia Pictures. When a Japanese tourist came to your country, he would not leave unless he had purchased at least 3 Gucci bags. And this was extremely impressive because Japan was a landlocked country with no natural resources. They literally did it through hard work. It came from its extremely competitive manufacturing, high savings, exports, technological, and capital accumulation. Everyone thought that Japan had figured out capitalism. But in the 90s, the bubble would burst. In the 80s, Japan had cheap money, and this led to high borrowing and everyone started speculating. Asset prices became detached from reality, and the Bank of Japan stepped in and raised interest rates. The psychology flipped overnight, and everyone started selling. And the banks were left with loads of bad loans. What would follow would be a banking crisis. The cautionary tale here is that the government stepped in to try to fuel the economy. They lowered rates from 6% to 0%. They had huge fiscal stimulus and eventually bailed out the banks. But it all failed. Why did it fail? Well, it was a balance sheet crisis. If you have a factory in Japan, it was worth $10 million and now it's only worth $5. And you owe the banks about $7 million. So when the central bank comes along and says, hey, here's cheap money, borrow more. You go, no thanks, we're trying to pay down our debt. You see, in a normal situation, you'd be able to outgrow your balance sheet crisis. But behind the wall, there was a much slower moving problem, an aging and shrinking population. The real problem, demographics. You see, in a normal situation, Japan could just outgrow its problem. Growing population meant more workers, more households, more consumption, and more demand. But Japan was heading in the opposite direction. A low birth rate and aging population meant the economy was getting smaller. So companies were not only facing their debt crisis, but they were also facing weaker demand. The demographic decline was the nail in the coffin. And that brings us to today's problem. America supporting Japan's currency is like putting a band-aid on a bullet hole. This band-aid will not stop Japan from bleeding out. The one thing that could save Japan is babies. So the US bailout of Japan is like a band-aid. The demographics or the disease. And there's only one cure for that: more babies.